Hello again, Gooners. Did you see that? I'm actually using this thing again. The clapperboard's back in use. The loose cannon, I've got to remind myself, number 75. And today, presented by Andre Arshavin, not speaking very well. It's transfermarket.com. So, yeah, compare transfermarket.com. Arsene did not sell me, but as you can see, I'm still here. With a little bit of a French accent I borrowed from Arsene. Haha. Anyway, yeah, I haven't been practicing my Arshavin accent because I thought he's going to be on the way, but he's still with us. I can't say I'm pleased to say it. I'd like to be pleased to say it because if he were appearing on the bench, it would be something to be excited about. But unfortunately, well, we have got something. Oh, fortunately, should I say, we have got something to be excited about. One new signing, as Arsene rightly or wrongly said. No one did any business in the transfer window. It could have fooled me. There was a lot of money changing hands, an awful lot of money changing hands. Obviously, Didier Drogba went elsewhere, which is what I expected. Nicolas Anelka, same thing. I didn't just want old boys coming back to the club. I wanted some young blood, and of course, we've brought in a really good left back by the looks of it against Stoke City. Of course, Nacho Monreal, who I described as like a Cockney restaurant in Canada somewhere, a Tex-Mex, of course. I'll let you guys work that one out for yourselves. He had a pretty solid game, to say the least. He looked good going forward, put in a beautiful cross which wasn't converted. Can't complain about his performance one bit. It looked like Waters was never going to get past him. Certainly impressive, very impressive debut performance from Nacho, and certainly more than a snack. But hardly a feast, was it, on the transfer front? So I was disappointed with that. Arsene Wenger admitted he wanted to bring in one extra player. We don't know who that extra player was. Perhaps it was Diame of West Ham. Perhaps not. But yeah, look, let's have a look at what everyone else spent and compare the market.com. Well, Man U, they brought in Zaha. It's no... they didn't really need to strengthen, did they? Because, I mean, they're top of the league. How many points clear? Ridiculous number. Manchester City, they're also a number, well, more than a number, a lot of points clear of us. We're not going to finish in first or second, that's for sure. They brought in a youngster called Donya. Don't know a lot about him. Chelsea, of course, brought in Demba Ba, who we possibly could have put a bid in. It's unclear whether we did or we didn't. Of course, there were reports that he preferred Chelsea over us, so perhaps it was the best thing to just let him join the club he wanted to join. Spurs above us as well, because of course I'm mentioning all these clubs because they're above us, and Arsene said none of the big clubs did any business. Virtually said they didn't do any. Of course they did, not on the very last day like we did. But Spurs brought in Lewis Holtby, who I believe is joining in the summer, and Zeki Fryer. Will they make a big difference to the team? Probably not this season. Obviously, if Holtby's not going to join to the summer, I think he's an excellent player, and I wish we'd made a move for him, but we'll see how he gets on at Spurs. Hopefully not too well. Everton brought in a youngster by the name of John Stones. Haven't seen a lot of him, so I suppose you could say, with the exception of Demba Ba, none of the teams above us have actually done any significant business that is going to make a difference to their standing in the league. Demba Ba already scoring goals. Then Liverpool just below us, Coutinho and Daniel Sturridge, big signings. And they're just below us. So that just goes to show that perhaps there was good reason for us to spend more money or bring in significant reinforcements. We decided for one reason or another to wait to the last day of the transfer window before doing anything. And that's always too late, in my opinion. Them also below us, they're not likely to catch us, but you never know. Newcastle United. Now, this is the club that I think have got the scouting policy right. And they brought in significant reinforcements. Yanga Mabiwa, obviously a player we've seen in action against us this season in the Champions League. He looked pretty good to me. Would have strengthened our midfield department, I feel, and he can play in defence too. He's just the sort of player that I would have liked to have seen join. I haven't seen enough of him to say for sure that he would have been a good Arsenal signing long term, but I think he would have done a good job for the remainder of this season. Mathieu Debuchy, another player that was brought over from France. I rate this guy. Excellent right back. Played very well for France, I thought, in the in the last big international tournament. Why didn't we try and get him? Same goes for Jan Gouffran, another good player, but a forward player, of course. Moussa Sissoko, already scoring goals for Newcastle after his arrival. The other players don't know so much about, but they've brought in a number. Did a lot of shopping in France and bought one player from Switzerland. Usually traditional places where we find talent. QPR brought in Loic Remy and Chris Samba. Chris Samba, a long-term transfer target. Loic Remy also linked with us a number of times. They've paid a record transfer fee for Remy. We'll see how well he does, but again, it does feel disappointing. Of course, we can't sign every player, and maybe we didn't really need to strengthen our striking department. But as I said, of those players that I've mentioned, I certainly would have made a move for Debussy, because I think in the right back department, Sagna clearly isn't on his game the way he was. So I'd consider bringing in a right back just to put pressure on him, because Jenkinson, he's not quite ready yet. But he's had, when he's played pretty well, and a lot of fans would like to see Jenkinson back instead of Sagna. I don't think Sagna's been that bad, but he's just clearly not concentrating. In the game against Stoke, he just passed the ball, well, without looking and without even seeming to care, and it went straight off for a Stoke throw, and then he didn't make huge mistakes. I think just one signing is probably not enough, but it does make a difference to the whole team. Monreal did make the defence look solid, and of course keeping a clean sheet can't be bad, can it? The other players that interested me, Jack Butland, Stoke signing him, of course, is not going to make an instant difference. He's remaining on loan at Birmingham, I understand. And then Sunderland signing Danny Graham. I thought Danny Graham looked a good player. Obviously scored against us. I'm not sure he's our type of player, but Jack Butland, I would have taken a gamble on. Certainly give a bit of competition to Szczesny in goal, but Szczesny did all right. He's not been playing that well of late. Wasn't overly impressed with his performance against Liverpool. And, well, we'll see. Having a different player in the back four could make all the difference. We shall see, but I really feel you need a strong goalkeeper. That's half of the battle. So talking of the Stoke game, what did I make of it? Well, it's always good to beat the Orcs. They're not the most refined of footballers. They're good footballers, don't get me wrong, but Wilkinson's fouls on Theo Walcott were horrendous, I thought. Nibbling away at him all the time, and this is the sort of thing. This harks back to the dark ages of football when flair players were just hacked to pieces. And I have a lot of respect for Tony Pulis, and I have a lot of respect for Stoke City as a football club. But I don't really like the way they play the game. I think it's. But then again, you've got to have good and evil, haven't you? Otherwise, it's one of those games that really gets us fired up. So. I've always thought that Stoke would be successful under Pulis. The way they play is, put it like this, it's successful, and you can't knock it that much, can you? If it works, I mean, this is the British League, and we have to play the way the way it works in this country. So it's no good us complaining about it. We've just got to get on with it. And some decisions go your way and some don't. And obviously at home you get more decisions, generally speaking. Theo felt that he wasn't given enough decisions, but obviously you might say we were a bit lucky with the goal because Theo was offside, not interfering with play. So the goal should have stood. And I just want to mention at this point, before I delve into the history book, just briefly, just want to mention what a good game Chris Foy had, the referee. Well done to him, because he let the game flow. When Michael Owen got into that tussle with Arteta, he didn't book anybody. I think he was very sensible, and let's hope to see more refereeing performances like that. Well, let's now go back in time, and I can't remember where we were. I think we were talking about the fact that we were the only professional club in London. Was that the bit? I can't remember, to be honest. That's how much I pay attention. All right, let's go. Promotion to the First Division. Yes, we didn't cover that. Page 28. If you're following this and you want to read along, feel free. Steve Stammers wrote this book, the official biography. It's compelling, so it says on the blurb, and I'm not going to argue with it. Promotion to the First Division. At one time, Arsenal were the only professional club in London Some people would say that's still the case. And their status in the metropolis did afford some advantages when players in the region opted to try their luck at the new professional game. Then there was the Boer War between 1899 and 1902. Well, that must have put a bit of a spanner in the works. Arsenal, by definition, were a club with a fierce military tradition and background, and such a vast commitment in South Africa was bound to have a substantial effect. The munitions factory, which my great-grandfather worked in, by the way, to cope with the demands of the war, brought in a Saturday afternoon shift. Already, players and supporters had been taken out of the area by the conflict. Now, the traditional football afternoon was badly hit by the national cause. At that time, with away fans almost unheard of, it was an unwritten rule that workers finished early on a Saturday, went for a pint, and on to the football. All that changed, and the football club just had to cope. It goes some way to explaining why, in those early days of its existence, Arsenal could not develop into a major force. They did reasonably in the circumstances, however, and their remote location, still regarded as an outpost by the teams from the Midlands and the North, gave them an edge. Of course, it is true, if you're out in the sticks, it does help, doesn't it? You hear teams like Plymouth Argyle, it's always a long trip for whoever goes there, and they used to have a pretty good home record. Or was it just the ground called Home Park makes you think that? I'm not too sure. Anyway, Arsenal tasted defeat only 13 times at home in their first 5 seasons. But by 1908, there were 4 other teams from London in the league: Clapton Orient, Fulham, Tottenham and Chelsea. Woolwich Arsenal finished their first campaign in the newly formed second division with 28 points from 28 games, ending up in 9th place out of 15. Not really that good, was it? It was an acceptable start, so Stammers disagrees with me there. As well as Storer, there was another international player who came through in those early seasons, the improbably named Caesar Llewellyn Jenkins. Of course, we had a Gus Caesar later, but let's not cut to the chase on that. Well, this particular Caesar, had the honour of being the first Arsenal player to be an international when he was chosen to play for Wales against Scotland in 1896. But both he and Storer caught the eye of more glamorous clubs and left within a year. Storer to Liverpool, Jenkins to Newton Heath, later to be renamed Manchester United. So you might say that this Caesar was the first ever Robin van Persie. Arsenal's lack of progress towards the top of the football tree was further highlighted when Arsenal were put out of the FA Cup by the then non-league Millwall 4-2 in January 1896. The committee decided to appoint a secretary-manager, one T.B. Mitchell from Blackburn, though soon afterwards he was replaced by George Elcote from Stockton. But it was his successor, Harry Bradshaw, who was to emerge as the first top-drawer manager of the club. Bradshaw acted fast and he acted firmly, which is something we don't do now in the transfer market. He brought in Jimmy Ashcroft from Sheppey United. Wow, big hitters I bet they were. The first Arsenal player to be capped by England to replace Storer. Another significant signing was an Australian fullback, Jimmy Jackson. Times were both changing and improving with crowds on the rise. The first 4-figure gate receipts were collected and an FA Cup clash with Sheffield United in February 1903 and in 1904 under Bradshaw's shrewd guidance. The club was promoted to the First Division after finishing second behind Preston North End. Tommy Shanks was the leading goalscorer with 25 league goals, and the team included Percy Sands, a teacher from Woolwich, and Archie Cross from Dartford. So, that's all we've got time for this time. Next time, we'll be talking about, or I'll be reading about, the arrival of Henry Norris. Until the next time, up the